Do you ever think about a bottle of wine and how it gets to the shelf in the first place? If I were to ask you to start a wine company tomorrow, where would you begin? And how would you achieve that final stage of being able to sell wine bottles to your friends, neighbors, restaurants, bars, and so on? In this episode, we are examining just that. How a married couple took their love of wine to the next level with the creation of Resign Wine. What's up, YouTube fam? It is Javier Mercedes here for Interv Wednesday. That's an interview on a Wednesday. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna interview Leo and Tiffany Resig. To all the viewers out there, they own, founded, and did all the things with Resign Wine. This whole story, I believe, begins where you guys meet. Like, how did you guys meet?
Oh, wow.
Back in the day in Chicago, advertising.
Yeah, so 2007.
I'll be honest, I was technically Leo's boss.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he hates this. He hates this.
She was definitely more senior than I was. I was not in IT, but I was the IT person.
Was
this during your advertising days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Leo was the do everything. Like the printer's broken. Hey, Leo, can you fix it? Although first, when he moved to our Chicago office where it was like 15 of us, we thought he was a spy. We're like, oh gosh, corporate HQ is sending this like California kid, and he was tan and his hair was all blonde and very cute, right? But everyone's like, who's the California guy? Well, lo and behold, he's an Indiana guy. So we're like, okay, good. You're a Midwesterner. You're like one of us.
Yeah. So I tricked her into liking me. And this is just about the time I was starting my media company with my brother, and he was out in Venice Beach, and we needed to hire a bunch of people and actually take this business seriously. So I was like, we got to move to LA. And we were a year into dating, and Tiffany dropped everything after 8 years in Chicago and moved out.
I'm assuming at some point in time while you guys are forming your relationship before you got married, that you guys loved wine. Yeah. I'm assuming.
Yes.
Is there any story of you guys early on thinking about doing something like this, or were you just like, I love wine?
So I was really lucky. So my career was in advertising, started in Chicago, and I was blessed that at a young age, I was at an agency. I was always taken to these wine dinners and events, and then I continued my career and went into sales. And we go to these dinners, and everyone's like, "Oh, Tiffany, you love wine. Here, look at the wine list. Order whatever you want." So that was my entrance into learning about wine, and it was also kind of like a prerequisite, check the box if I was going to like be serious with this guy.
I was the aficionado.
Let's hear your story.
Right out of college, I thought, well, first of all, I didn't want a real job. And I'm going to go write screenplays and become this amazing screenwriter. But, of course, you can't make any money off that, so you have to wait tables or bartend. So I got a job at Enoteca Piatini in Lincoln Park at a wine bar. I mean, they had 20 wines by the glass at all times and a book this big by the bottle.
And it was a great wine list. Yeah.
They had Tiffany, actually, we don't know this.
I wonder if you ever waited on me. Or
She
at Park Grill,
She had
too.
been there and at Park Grill, and while I was serving for sure. And so I could have served you, waited on you, before we've never, and yeah.
Before we met.
So my job was to bullshit about wine. And they'd be like, oh, what pairs well with this dish? And I just had all these pre-recorded canned responses, and none of it was true. But I'd always go back and check, like, oh, how is everything? And no one ever complained. And I never told the truth about the time. I completely bullshitted my way through it. But I actually ended up picking up a lot of wine knowledge and loving wine. So all my friends were drinking beer, and I'd go home at night, pop open a bottle of wine, and I was that guy.
No Corona lights for you.
Yeah.
When did the idea start? When was the impetus of we should do a wine company?
I think we found the artist. I mean, it's not fully art first, but a lot of it does have to do with our artist, Zach Johnson. We found him at Oscar's, a little taqueria in Venice Beach on Rose Avenue, and he had his artwork, and it wasn't like it was like in a hallway, and we each saw it at different times. And throughout our meal together, we're like, dude, did you see that artwork? Wasn't that really like
I'm assuming at this point it was
Catching?
his acid and ice cream.
Yeah, it's
stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
it's the acid and ice cream
So-
series. Yes.
So we saw these two in the hallway at Oscars, and yeah,
Not the wine bottles, but the actual.
yeah,
Correct.
They were the
Yeah.
full size paintings, and we both love the artwork. So we tracked down the artist to this gallery in Venice called the Cave Gallery, and we're like, who is this guy? How can we get prints? And of course, they were still selling some prints. He only does limited runs, and they sell out really quick. But I was able to buy these two prints, and when Tiffany quit her job at Hulu, that was I gave her this gift as because when I saw this artwork, the first thing that comes to my mind is, fuck it, I'm out.
Right.
It's
it's like peace.
You just quit your job and you're out, right? And so that everyone has their own interpretation of art. Even Zach, the artist, looks at his art through a different lens and describes it differently. But he's like, hey, if that's what you think, then that's what you think. Like that,
for sure.
That's the truth. So we ended up buying these two pieces, and they're hanging in our home. And so we're just looking at them every day, and it's just like, man, how awesome would these
that
be
be?
as a wine label?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Seriously.
That's
Yeah.
crazy that the art inspired the wine, or you guys' your venture into this whole thing
Yeah.
in the
The
beginning.
brand. Yeah.
yeah, and it absolutely did. Even to a point where, I get a wild hair and I get an idea, and I'm just that idiot who acts on it. For better,
Serial entrepreneur.
for better or for worse, the track record is 1 out of every 10 things that I try actually works, and the jury's still out on this one. But it was one of those things. I was like, Tiff, if I can get a hold of Zach and try to license his artwork, if he says yes, we're doing this.
Yeah. We're gonna find a winemaker.
Yeah.
And then wheels in motion, go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool that the art was the thing that inspired it.
And what's so funny too is Zach, we met him in Portland a year and a half ago, knows nothing about wine, doesn't drink wine, loves craft beer. And so we brought him a case of of our 15 rosé. And he's like, he was going to leave it. It was a really hot summer in Portland too. And he's like, he's going to leave the case of rosé up there. And we're like, Zach.
In his artist studio.
Yeah, in his artist studio, 90 degrees. We're
It was hot.
Dude, there's no AC. You can't keep that in there. He's like, well, I'll just keep it in the car then. We're like,
You can't do that either.
let me take it to your house and put in the AC.
He's such a
It was-
sweetheart. And
yeah.
we've sent him the rest of the wine.
Yeah.
He loves it now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Zach's awesome.
Awesome.
Such a talented guy.
Yeah, I was looking at his IG. Before you guys saw these ones, it looked like he had a whole line of exploding heads
The
type
series.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the acid and the ice cream.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really time consuming when you talk to him about how he goes about doing the artwork. He actually hires a model and he does pen and ink. And he has the model spin around and make all these movements. And then he pens and inks the background.
Well, and starts with pencil,
Right,
like
pencil.
old school
Yeah,
pencil
pencil.
eraser.
Yep.
So these existed. We commissioned him for the rosé,
Right.
which is the first wine we ever made. And what was so cool about the process for this one is because we knew we needed a rosé bottle. We wanted something pink. He didn't have anything pink, and so he was like, "Well, what do you want the model to wear?" And I had no idea that
Yeah.
he actually hired talent to
Make these
to model
movements.
for these crazy kinetic labels.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I don't know. I knew we wanted a French theme because these are Rhone style wines that we started off with. And when you think France, you think, the classic black and white striped shirt.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'd love for her to have a skirt like that. And then, kind of make it throwback. We'll go polka dots on top. And as she's spinning around, we'll get, this awesome shot of the skirt up and legs and arms flying everywhere. And he hired a model and just took a bunch of shots of her spinning around. And
Yep.
we have all these photos. I got to show you these things.
That's awesome.
And then we got to see the anatomy of how he
It actually
approaches
coming
it.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
fruition.
Right.
That's crazy. So the big thing to point out too is on the dress, it has that stripe, and then it's replicated in the label.
The
And
common thread.
that is all Leo. So Leo is such a brand. You've always studied brands, and I think we always talked about that too growing up, how we both always studied brands, but you are obsessed with building brands. And the foil, who comes up with this? Leo. He's just You're a master.
Oh, thanks. Well,
a pretty cool husband, I will say.
I Google everything, and when Tiffany ever asks me anything that I don't know, I'm like, Google it, and she wants to rip my head off. But when we were thinking about doing it, I found a stat online that 85% of consumers in a grocery store or liquor store buy the bottle of they don't know what they're gonna buy, and they buy the bottle by the label. And
I
so,
mean, isn't that what you do sometimes? I mean, that's what I do.
I do it.
It's like, that's
me.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because consumers, we all want to try something different all the time. You know, you stay loyal to a brand and you'll always go back to the well with certain wines. But other than that, there's so many awesome wines out there that you just want to try different stuff. And more often than not, you're going to buy the wine with a kick-ass label. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we took a very heavy design and branding and marketing first approach to the wine. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, we obviously wanted to back it up with really good wine, because the last thing we want to do is make a shitload of wine and not drink it.
Yeah. We wanted to, that was really it.
So I'm drinking it right now.
Yeah. We wanted to have something that we stood behind and really enjoyed to drink. Mm-hmm. Where's your glass, Javi?
I would love one.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I actually wanted to ask was, with your guys' first bottle and the whole design of it, is it just coincidence that you guys met on Rose Avenue? And it's a rosé.
Oh, that's so cute.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't either.
You didn't know? So okay. So here's
I'm stealing that story, by the way.
That's cute.
Here you were mentioning branding, and when I'm going through if you should check out their website, by the way.
Resignwine.com.
Boom. In terms of branding, I would just say Leo's even if you didn't know anything about you and you read you just go to the website. It's like, holy cow, you get exactly what it is right from the beginning. Like in terms of when you open it up and you see the wine, and it even looks like what's going on the labels.
Yeah.
Which I remember you asking me, like, can we like shoot a bottle of wine and then have it explode? And then I was like,
still want to do that.
I bet that's what he wanted it for.
Totally
like right when I saw
that.
But
that was you. You came up with that.
Still got to do it.
Yeah. So seeing
sure.
that, and
I
then
want to throw wine on you.
when you read all of the material, it's like everything is so on point in terms of how it all correlates with each other. And I was like, holy cow, did they actually, in my mind, when I read the whole Rose Avenue thing, I was like, oh, that's why they, maybe like that ties into
That's
why
fun.
they did the rosé and all that. And then that's why you named it Prime Rose. But yeah.
Well, actually,
I love that.
that's exactly what it is. No, I mean, no shit, I'm stealing that story.
Yeah, for sure,
we
for
found
sure.
Zach
Because I think it was
Johnson.
subliminal. It had to be.
Yeah.
Because
Actually, it kind of could have been.
yeah.
You came
Other
up
than-
with Primrose, and I don't.
Well, because it's a rosé.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yes,
blonde
but
hair.
I mean, I think some of it might be part of that.
Well, and actually, what's interesting is as you know, we talked about the theme of, you know, to me, this is the official wine of quitting your job. It's the official wine of new chapters. You know, it's shedding your old life and moving on to the next chapter, right? And what
Or
we
even
did,
a day.
yeah,
Have
coming
a bad,
home from a
have bad
shitty day, pop open a bottle of
Yeah.
wine, and so
It'll all
you'll
be better
see the
tomorrow.
theme throughout. Even the names that we chose for these, which, by the way, the best way to ever choose wine names is just get wine drunk
That was really fun. We actually
and
came up with.
get bar napkins and a pen.
It was Sonoma, and that's one of the awesome things too about having a wine business. You get to go to Sonoma at least 4 times a year. So
Sounds like a horrible life.
yeah, horrible.
Yeah.
We're out
And,
there next
It's
week.
a business expense.
Yeah.
This winery won't make money for decades. Like,
Unless y'all want to buy Resign Wine.
but but what we started with, beyond the Primrose, you know, obviously the rest of our line is red wines, and we wanted to go with a theme of this new beginnings, of new chapters, and so we chose, you know, Happy Trails, Anchors Away, and Godspeed, because they all, you know, imply this, like, you know, good luck, man,
Yeah.
all the best. Like Godspeed, safe travels, anchors away, you're off.
Happy trails.
And happy trails. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've met your artist, everything's in motion now. How does it get from, well, we know what our bottle is going to look like, kind of. How did you even start with knowing that you wanted to do a rosé?
Interestingly enough, we set out to make
A GSM.
a GSM, which is Grenache Syrah Mourvèdre.
Right.
It's modeled after a classic French wine called Chateauneuf du Pape.
The only grows in California?
Yeah, and the best place
too,
that
yeah.
those grapes grow and thrive are in the central coast of California. So if you want the best GSM that America can make, it's Paso Robles, San Ynez, Central Coast, California. The combination of those grapes grow the best. We honestly set out to just make one wine and didn't plan on having a whole line, because going back to like the beer days when we had our brewery, we made a bunch of different beers. But at the end of the day, one of them is going to be your flagship beer, and in our case, the flagship wine.
Just to point out, Leo is co-founder of theCHIVE, and they had KCCO beer when he's referencing.
I need to pour some out. Can you do a visual of me pouring some out?
The gold lager.
Yeah, so he also had a venture in beer as well.
Yeah, and
A solid venture.
it's fun. The 52nd largest brewery in America at one point. Front
really?
page of the USA Today.
Yeah.
Now we're out of business.
But anyhow, just to give them context of what you were talking about with the brewery.
Yeah. And so we knew we wanted to have a flagship wine. Our GSM is the flagship wine. The reason we made Syrah and Grenache was because we already had the grapes, and so we were like, screw it, let's just make single varietals of each. And our winemaker, Phil Staley, was like, it was 3 years ago, and we were like, man, Tiffany was drinking a lot of rosé. It was just getting hot. And we were like, well, we'd love to do a rosé. And he's like, I can just take these exact same grapes and make you a rosé with literally the bleed off, right?
Yeah, so that's what Saignée means, to bleed off. So our 15 rosé and our 16 rosé are Saignée style. Our 17 rosé is going to be direct press. So that's where instead of the bleed off, the grapes are actually used for rosé, which is more of a Provence style.
From a layman's terms,
Yeah.
like what's the difference between the bleed off and just straight up pressing it?
Yeah, direct press.
Yeah.
Direct press is using grapes specifically to make a rosé, where Saignée style is using the bleed off of making red wine, and it's using kind of like it's kind of like the leftover, the bleed off of the red wine to make the rosé.
And it spends more time on the skin, which gives it a deeper color. Like a lot more rosés are very pale salmon color. Back in the day, this was thrown in the drain.
Really?
Right? Yeah. It was the bleed off, and so they wouldn't make wine for it. They wouldn't make wine commercially as a rosé because they just let it go down the drain. But then someone realized it's pretty damn good and it still gets you drunk. So.
How did you guys meet the winemaker himself?
Phil.
Early on, we were an investor in a wine club company called Wine Awesomeness. You get 3 bottles a month in the mail, and there's this awesome little booklet that comes with it that explains the wines, where they're from, why you should enjoy them, and what foods to pair them with. And the gentleman who wrote the copy for this, his name's Peter Eastlake. And he just had such a great way of explaining wine to people who you don't need to know a lot about wine other than you liked it and you just kind of wanted to learn a little more about it. Through my buddy who runs Wine Awesomeness, I hit him up and I was like, hey, I'd love to meet this Peter Eastlake guy and pick his brain about the wine world. And really, he was kind of the guy who opened up the doors to us to then meet our winemaker, Phil, at the time. And we hit him up right after we had the harebrained idea of like, okay, if Zach Johnson will license us the labels, we're going to make a wine.
We need to find a winemaker.
And then, and we need to find a winemaker, AKA, how the fuck do you find a winemaker? Right?
Yeah.
Like it had to have, like the stars had to have lined at that point. Like we weren't just going to go knock on some doors and make cold calls. We happened to know a guy who knew a guy who introduced us to the guy. So Peter's out in Healdsburg in Sonoma, and we went out, met with him, obviously went wine tasting, and told him what we wanted to do. And he happened to know the right people, and we didn't even interview any other winemakers. He's like, I've got just the guy for you.
And,
awesome.
And Phil is, that's the thing. He's a great guy. And I feel like our wine knowledge since starting this business in 2015 has grown exponentially, and we've done some tests and exams and more travels. But Phil is one of those guys too. You can ask him any question about making wine, and I mean, his background is farming and chemistry, and there's a lot that goes into making a bottle of wine. Any question you ask him, he's not going to make you feel like an idiot. So it's great because I don't have to act like I know
I just
everything.
nod my head and say,
Yeah, yeah.
He's got beakers out when we do the wine tasting. I mean, the dude's a mad scientist.
Yeah, don't they have, it looks like a turkey baster, doesn't it?
The
Like,
thief.
The thief, yeah.
Is that what it's called?
It's
Yeah.
called the thief, yeah. And it goes in and like
something new
'cause
every day.
It's
'Cause you steal
stealing
the
the wine
wine.
out of the barrels. Yeah.
So that leads me to my next question. So you meet him, and how does it go from? Is it like I have this plot of land that you like transition from somebody else that already owned it, or?
Yeah, so we're sourcing. So we don't own our own grapes, but we're specifically sourcing. We know all the vineyard farmers and owners that we're sourcing from. And so we work with Phil, and he's been making wine for almost like 15, 20 years under his own private label called Inkadu. And Phil's from Sonoma, so he's got great relationships with these growers. And so we go and we source grapes from them. But what's been awesome too is he's given us so much runway to just do things. So we're working with cooperages in France and buying barrels.
That's crazy.
And wiring money, internationally wiring money to buy the barrels and ship them over, and paying the freight, paying all of our invoices with working directly with whoever we're sourcing the grapes from. So Phil's the winemaker, and he's extremely hands-on, but he's given us a lot of the freedom as being entrepreneurs to really run it like a business.
And that's what we told him going into it. We're like, hey, we're in this to just learn more about wine in general. And we don't want to just. You could wake up tomorrow morning and buy juice. Like there's a whole market for going out and buying barrels of wine that someone's already made. You can throw it in a bottle, slap your label on it, and sell it. And we just want to we wanted to take a soup to nuts approach, and again going back to traveling out to Sonoma to meet with Phil. Basically, all we're doing is tasting a ton of different wines and telling him what we like and don't like about wines. And he's just sits there taking notes and narrowing down like, okay, I know I'm going to get these Syrah grapes from this vineyard and these Mourvedre grapes from this vineyard. And because he just knows everyone, he's got the facilities for his own winery, but also is able to do what we call as custom crush.
Right.
He's not on the vineyard himself. He's just like pulling from all these different ones. That's crazy.
But he goes and he visits all these vineyards too, because he has all.
So you guys get like the pick of everything.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It's pretty awesome. It's pretty, and so when we're actually going to Napa to Sonoma next week, and we'll be tasting through our blend to make the GSM, which is the Grenache Syrah Mourvedre. So for our 16, we sourced 2 different blocks for the Grenache, and we sourced from two completely different vineyards for the Syrah. We did Eagle Point, which is in Mendocino, and Atusa, which is in Sonoma. And so we'll taste these, 2 different blocks of Grenache, 2 different vineyards of the Syrah, and then determine the blend too. How much Grenache do we want? How much Syrah? And then how much Mourvedre?
That's cool.
And it's
fun.
It's really
so
fun.
you guys it's cool that you guys aren't even bound by like just one region. You're just like, let's throw that in there.
Yeah.
And then you get down, you learn these things that you'd never even anticipated going into it. And it's like, and Phil's like, hey, we're going to be bottling on this date in March. Make sure you delivered the bottles, the labels, the foil
approval.
capsules, and the
I
corks.
noticed you guys were choosing corks and everything like that too.
There's so much that goes into making a bottle of wine, and it's like, and you don't know that going into it. You're like, oh, this is gonna be a cute little. At first, honestly, we went into this like this will be a fun little side project for wife to have, and now it is a full-on business. It's my full-time job right now.
You're studying to become a somm, are you not?
Yeah, so we did our introductory sommelier class in August at Tech Somm, and it was my birthday gift. So for my birthday, Leo gave me an exam, which
I got
amazing.
to see. In college, I may have partied a little more than Tiffany, and when she was in school, she was like the bookworm nerd who didn't party at all. And so, leading up to this test, we're studying a book this big,
huge binder,
everything there is to know about wine, and we're going to be tested on it. And so, she's studying for months in advance, and I'm like 2 weeks out, just cramming. I put it off, procrastinating, and it was up in Dallas at Tech Somm, and Tiffany gets done with it. We went through 2 days of tasting and courses.
And full on, like it was like
Yeah.
8-9 hours of studying. And there's master sommeliers who are teaching the course, and amazing. Cannot speak highly enough about the court of master sommeliers. There's a lot of different wine education outlets out there, but I truly believe that the court, the education that they have, is just it's
awesome,
bar none.
So we get done taking this test, and we were one of the last people to finish. There's about 80 people in the room taking the test with us. Tiffany gets up, turns her test in. I'm sweating bullets. I'm going through this thing. It's multiple choice, and I know exactly how many I need to hit to pass.
So
it's
funny
pass
about
fail.
that, yeah.
Like you don't get an A, B, C, D. Like you either pass it or they don't call your name.
Right.
Right. And so
I think it's like 80% of the folks that take the intro pass, and then so there's 4 levels. We'll take maybe a step back too. There's 4 levels in the court. There's the intro, and then there's certified. And so for intro, it's theory only. So we're not tested on tasting, blind tasting. We're not tested on service. So there's 3 parts. There's theory, service, and tasting, and we're only tested on theory for intro. Then for certified, the pass rate is like 50
Lower.
or 30%. I think it's like 30%.
Does that include tasting now?
That includes. I know it
does
It
include
does.
tasting,
So
yeah.
it's all 3. So theory, tasting, and service. And most of the folks that take these classes, the intro or these tests, they're already in the service industry. So they're studying to become, or they're already sommeliers in the restaurant industry. And then after certified, there's advanced. And I think that pass rate is like 13%. And then for masters, it's like 3. There are 224 master sommeliers in the entire world.
Yeah, it's a great.
insane.
There's some, and then there's some into the bottle, but like both of those document.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it documents the process amazingly.
Yes.
it does.
They're
It
coming
really
out with
does.
Somm 3 too.
I love those. Like
They're great.
Yeah.
They're
movies.
cool.
Yeah.
So are you? Do you plan to try and go the full
I would.
4?
I really do want to take. I want to take certified.
Yeah, but not beyond that.
Not
Yeah,
be the
no, no,
master
no.
mat. You don't want to
No, I'm
like.
not aspiring. We're good friends. So Austin's really
It's
awesome.
all consuming. The test is insane.
There's.
Oh yeah,
We enjoy it.
looking at the documentary. It looks
Oh my
crazy because it's
gosh.
like just the region and all that other stuff in general. So if for the certified one, are
Yeah.
you when you're tasting it, are you going through the whole thing like? I think in the
it's
documentary that he's like this taste or it smells
Tennis balls.
the tennis balls or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's the grid. It's like
Okay.
so they call it the Court Master Sommeliers has a grid that you go through, and you start with color. You look at the wine.
Let's see it.
You look at the wine, and you look for any abnormalities. Do you see any fog or anything in this wine? This wine is clear.
What would so if there was if there was an abnormality, what would that mean? Like where would that steer you
The
towards?
fogginess could steer towards.
It could be an older wine. It could be
if there's sediment in it, right? If they're like a red would have sediment, or maybe a white wine has a little bit of a fogginess to it, that could determine like the region of it,
Okay.
or again the age of it.
Okay.
yeah.
So it's sight, and then nose. You're the smell of it, and you go through the grid on the smell. There's a lot of different classifications for that, and then the taste, and then with the grid too, you have to narrow down. You start with the country. So it's country. So this wine is from France. This
Nah.
wine is from not.
It's Old
It's
World,
Old World, New World. Thank you.
So-
Old World, New World.
Yeah.
So it would be I'm assuming European versus like American or
Yeah. And you can definitely tell even just by smelling an Old World wine, a European wine, French, Italian, Spanish wine versus California, Washington, Oregon, New Zealand, Australia. You can tell
The fruit, the alcohol.
and that's just one of them.
the earthiness, the mustiness of it. But the grid is extensive, but it makes sense as you're going through
really does.
and deducting what's in the glass.
Yes.
You can
Not what's in the box.
Yeah. Now it's in the box. Yeah.
That's what we should do. Like do a blind tasting with Somms, and it's like straight Franzia, like anything in a box. It'll just puke. I'll be like, that's box wine.
Yeah. Next question. So you met him. You guys are doing California. You're sourcing the grapes, but because it's sourcing, do you guys not have to have like the whole waiting period of having an actual bottle of wine, or is it like if you guys have the idea to do wine, is it like, all right, let's do a wine bottle, and then you have to wait 8 years before it's aged and done all its stuff?
Exactly. So that's why, I mean, even though we started the company in 2015, we'll only be bottling our second vintage because we sourced 15 grapes for our first red vintage, which was bottled last year, and then 16 reds are getting bottled now in 18.
So we age the reds for about a year in French oak barrels.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean the waiting, there is a waiting.
There's
game.
a waiting period.
It's not nearly as
versus
bad
just
as
sourcing direct, like buying juice direct.
We're not aging whiskey for 10 years.
Okay.
Right.
But yeah, we do age it, and because if we didn't, it'd be awful. There's a reason wine is aged,
Yeah.
It's got to take on the flavors of the oak barrel, and even if you don't age it in oak, it's just got to chill the fuck out.
Yep.
It's just got to mellow out, or the tannins are too high, the acid's too high. It'll rip your face off. So there's a reason.
Ice cream.
Acid, yeah, that's so true. Acid and ice cream. Yeah, love that.
We gotta steal all these.
I know. That's so good. I never.
He's making
about
it sound
that.
like we planned all this. We did not.
I wish. Yeah, and actually the rosé, great acidity on it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, because that was one of the other things. Like, I didn't know for wine if it was, obviously aging it makes it taste better, but if it was one of those things where, yes, you guys had a bottle in the very beginning in 2015, but it wasn't just like, oh, this is just for kind of show, just because the grapes haven't actually aged, or if it was like, no, this is our stuff.
Licenses. Okay, so this is like a mother trucker. It takes forever to get licenses. So there's TTB, which is the national level, TABC, which is the Texas level, and you've got to get all these license and approvals, and then even like Travis County and then the city of Austin. You've got to get like approvals and licenses for everything before you can even sell a thing. So
is this because it's alcohol, or is it because
alcohol.
it's wine?
It's because it's alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah. The regulations are strict, and each state has different regulations, different taxes.
Apparently the government doesn't want just anyone making substance that gets you hammered. And
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
yeah. And
They
they
also,
need,
the
and they need
government
their
also
they
wants
need their
to
hand
take
in
their
their cookie
cut.
jar.
They want their cut.
Yeah. No, so we it's not like, hey, we're starting a widget company and we're gonna sell widgets online.
And we can just ship to whomever.
So there's a lot of red
process,
tape,
yeah.
but there's the system set up, the infrastructure's there. We're a producer, and then we work with distributors and wholesalers. But the great thing about Texas is we can actually sell directly to restaurants and liquor stores without going through a distributor. So I got to believe that the laws are loosening up a little bit. You got to remember the 3-tiered system was imposed right after Prohibition.
And that's for alcohol, or not alcohol, but like in terms of distributor, if you were talking about beer, you wouldn't be able to go straight to like H-E-B or Kroger or everything like that.
Yeah.
You would have to go to a distributor, then that distributor can take said
Yeah,
beer.
and they
Exactly.
tap the box and they add 30% to the price. Because interesting enough, the reason that there's a handful of reasons why they didn't want the producer to sell directly to the retailer is because they were afraid that the same owner would own the distributor. I'm sorry, the producer.
Retail store?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is common in Europe, which means that all the little guys couldn't get into the game because if you could make your own product and sell it to the end consumer, you'd block everyone out.
Right.
And the funniest reason, and this is true, why there was a 3-tiered system is they wanted to jack the price on booze to make it harder to buy so people wouldn't abuse the substance if it was more expensive. And so all you consumers out there who are buying drinks at a bar or in a liquor store and you think it's expensive, it's because there's 30% tagged onto it, so you drink less.
On top of the tax that's already for alcohol and things like that. That's crazy.
So again, go to resignwine.com and you can purchase direct these lovely bottles of wine.
But how does that work though? Is it because it's wine that you're able to do that, or?
Wine has, I'd say, the loosest regulations compared to liquor and beer. Beer's not too far behind. Breweries here in Austin, like Jester King, for example, they were actually leading the charge on changing the current law, which allows them to sell wine directly to consumers out of a tasting room. And that didn't exist 5 years ago.
And like with their beer, it's like you can do it, but they have their bottles there, but I think their first thing was like they have a cup, and then you purchase the cup, and then they fill.
That's
the
what
cup
they used
up.
to do.
Yeah.
They used to be, hey, buy parking for $30 and drink all the samples you want.
Yeah, it was something like
You know?
that. Can you take me through the process of you guys? All right, everything's in motion, and you selected your grapes and everything. From that point on, you said you aged it. So is it like as it's aging, you guys are visiting and tasting then, or is it something? Like,
You
what
do.
goes on?
Yeah. Well, two things are happening. One, you've got wine aging in a barrel. So you go out and you take the thief and you taste the wine from the barrel. But you're also talking about the next year's vintage, and are we going to stick with the same styles of wine next year? Do we want to source something different? And so then you're tasting other wines, which he can then go out and source and put the contract in place to go get it. And so it's always this rolling cycle of sourcing grapes while tasting the wine.
There's
that's
really
in
in
the barrel.
winemaking, there's never a downtime.
It seems like it's kind of like lottery in terms of like you can, not necessarily lottery, but like a stock trade, but for grapes.
Yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
it's definitely a commodity. There's
That's the word I was looking for.
there's places everywhere, especially in California, northern California, where there are higher quality grapes that grow in certain regions on certain mountains because of the climate and the microclimates there, and so those are going to command a premium. And but then it's California, it's ag country, and so there's just tons and tons of people growing amazing grapes all throughout California.
And the regulations too. I mean, each country has different regulations. So like France, really, really strict regulations. Italy, more strict, not quite as strict as France. The states don't have as strict of regulations with AVAs, which means American Viticulture Area. I think it's just AVA.
Say it with confidence and it'll be true.
Yeah. AVA, American Viticulture Area. And so AVAs, new AVAs in the States are popping up a lot, often, versus where France, it's like, started with the Cicercian monks in Burgundy, like way back.
It's crazy.
They've got crazy regulations. So we've
Probably
got
for
a
good
lot.
reason.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But we've got a lot more flexibility in the States.
So to put a certain varietal on your wine in France, it has to be from a certain region, or else you cannot even put that label on your bottle. Whereas in America,
Is that
It's so
by
much
that,
more
do you mean
relaxed.
like if you were to classify it as a specific kind of wine, you can't call it that unless it's like from that region?
Correct.
Or,
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
So like a red Burgundy it's France, and then it's Pinot Noir, and it's only can come from Burgundy.
if you're in France,
Everything today.
Yeah.
if you're in the U.S., if you just grow a Pinot Noir grape, it doesn't matter where you're at. You can call it
You
Pinot
can call
Noir.
it Pinot Noir. Yeah.
Oh, so that's crazy.
Yeah.
Is it so?
American Burgundy. We need to coin that.
Yeah, American
Let's piss off France.
Is
It can be our Pinot Noir.
Just call it American
That could be our
Burgundy.
name. Because we're okay. So for we're bottling a Pinot Noir, and we're trying to come up with so we've got Anchors Away for the GSM Godspeed Grenache. We're trying to come up with a name for the brand for our Pinot Noir, American Burgundy. American Burgundy Pinot Noir.
Screw you, France.
Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir.
So you're thinking of the future while you guys are making your very first one.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the first
So
place.
for 15, I remember when we were tasting the blend for 15, it was December of last year. Yeah. And we were tasting, but not everything was blended together yet. So like similar to what we're doing next week when we're tasting the two different blocks for the Grenache and two different vineyards for the Syrah, it hadn't all been blended together yet. And so we're seeing how things have progressed. Like, how does that Eagle Point Grenache taste? How does that Eagle Point Syrah taste? And do we like that? Do we not like that? Do we want to put a little bit less Syrah in this one?
Is it like in terms of cooking, if you were like, this needs more salt, and then, but obviously instead of salt, it's more complex of like, all right, it's going to affect your different palate in different ways.
Right.
But When you so if you're tasting it in the very beginning, how do you know what to add? Or, well, I guess you can't take away
That's
anything.
so much, Phil. I mean, like, but a lot of things, what you're looking, and what we're really striving to do too, is just really make a balanced wine. So not too over tannins. So tannin is like if you take a drink of wine. Here we go. And
She just wanted a glass of wine.
if your mouth feels like it's like really like
Grippy.
dry and grippy,
Like I would call, for me, I'd call it like bitter almost. Yeah.
bitter, kind of like sandpapery.
On your
right?
tongue, like the
Yeah.
texture.
On your tongue and around your cheeks,
Yeah.
that is going to signify the tannins, right? So that if there's a lot of that, and if it's like really a dry mouthfeel, high tannins. Conversely, if your mouth is like dripping, like if you take a drink of wine, and it's mostly not as so much with like a fuller bodied wine like our GSM, but with a Pinot Noir, with any some white wines, like a Sauvignon Blanc or a white Burgundy, acidity. So if you take a drink of wine and your mouth feels like it's watering, like salivating, that
You can go like
signifies
this, and your mouth is dripping.
high acidity.
And then, so when you guys are first chasing it, you're
Yeah.
going. Is that
For
just the
balance.
first? Is that just the first step in terms of like what you guys were talking about with the grid? It's like,
Yeah.
all right, so when I taste this, it's like, what am I tasting? Is that what I'm looking for? And then,
Yeah.
can you add to nullify some of those things?
Well,
I mean-
you can't add or subtract, but like we also have to trust our winemaker. So like
Yeah.
when our Syrah, our Happy Trail Syrah first got bottled, we got it, and I was like, oh my gosh, dude, the tannins on this thing. You take a
Yeah.
sip, and you're
Such
like,
a wine thing to say.
It
I'm
is.
gonna totally say that when I'm in a fine restaurant. and
It's
be
so
like,
true, the
oh man,
tannins-
the tannins on
If
this.
you, if
It
you
was
say
like-
these
it
tannins
was-
are ripping my face
it's,
off.
yeah, and it was,
Yeah.
and Phil's like, I remember I called him, I was like, he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, so the Syrah and the tannins, it's like really high. He's like, it'll tame down. And
And
sure
it did,
enough,
it mellowed.
it totally mellowed
When it was in
out.
the bottle.
Yeah.
Yes, in the bottle.
crazy.
It just had to like, I mean, too, it had gotten shipped from California to Austin. And it's just like, wine is such a volatile living
Sounds like a
being.
master wizard.
Well, yeah,
Right?
and think of
Yeah.
it this way: like, you don't have to just age wine in a barrel, and a lot of people think that the aging is done in a barrel, and that's very much true with a spirit like a whiskey, right? Whereas with wine, you can age it in glass, and it's constantly going to change. It's living, breathing. There's bacteria in there that are constantly at work changing the flavor profile of wine. So if
And
you take
wine-
this bottle and open it
Expose
10
to, like,
years from now,
sunlight and everything.
yeah,
Right.
of course.
Completely
And the
gonna-
temperature
Totally.
of where you store it has a
Yep.
lot to do with it. But like
That's
the
a
Yep, hence the wine fridge.
Yeah.
wine fridge behind us. If you didn't notice, there's a wine fridge behind us.
55-ish. But the misnomer
dark.
with with a bourbon, right? If you keep your bourbon in a bottle that was bottled in 1999 and you open it today, people think that, oh my God, it's been aged for so much longer, it's going to taste different. Well, not if it's been in a bottle. Like, there's no more living organisms in it. All it's doing is just sitting there.
And that's because it's such a high alcohol content for bourbons. I'm assuming so. Because
I don't know if it's the alcohol content, because you're probably going to get people fact checking what I'm talking about right now.
Oh yeah.
But like bourbon can
No, but-
no,
you
I'm
can
just
open-
spitballing. Like,
Yeah. But you can open like a bottle of bourbon.
Well, the
and
the
it's not
bourbon,
gonna go bad. Like it can still sit
the
like
bourbon,
with wine. You
it
can
ferments
open
and
it
takes on its flavor profile while in the barrel. And so when you see a bourbon that's been aged 10 years, it's in a barrel for 10 years. And then it's taking on the characteristics of the barrel. And then when you bottle it, it's done. It's suffocated to the world. If there's no oxygen in there, it's not going to change. It's not going to get better with time. It'll just, lose its spirit share and evaporate over time. Whereas wine is changing for hundreds and hundreds of years. Most wines you can't drink after a certain period of time, which is, another misnomer is like there's certain wines that if you don't drink
There's
them
a
within the
specific
window,
aging period.
then after that it's just awful.
does it have a specific term, like a golden ratio of like your bell curve, like wherever the cusp of the bell curve would be?
It's exactly that. Yeah.
Okay.
We try to label our wines and like, oh, drink this in 5 years.
Well, and
Do you have them like segmented in
we've started that, yeah, and we started.
Here's what we do: we just drink it whenever.
No, we because having Paris, we wanted to do like from a lot
Paris
of
is
our
that
friends.
kid.
Here's our 3.5-year-old little girl who is awesome, and she's going to be blessed with an amazing collection of wine when she's of age. Because from our friends, we've gotten the idea of doing birth wines, and so she's born in 2014, and so we've been collecting wines from 2014 to give to her, and it'll age.
That won't be bad in 21 years?
And even some really great Sonoma Chardonnays that are year 14, vintage 14, and we'll age them and give them to her.
Oh, they'll be awesome.
Oh, they'll be so amazing.
I think that's one of the crazy things that's like you can't buy time. It's like it's such a commodity or just like an asset.
Yeah.
Like that's the value of it is astronomical, especially when you're talking about something like that. It's like sure you could cram 2 weeks for a test, but you can't you can't have you buy a wine when they're 21 years old. That's fucking crazy. That's so cool.
And it's psychological too. So there's studies that have proven that if you think you're drinking older wine, you're going to think that it's better. Mm-hmm. If you think you're drinking a more expensive wine, you're going to enjoy it more.
You think that's better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like your brain plays tricks on you, whether you like it or not. It's wild.
Well, yeah, I also and also since it's like the smell and all that other stuff, it's like so many different senses that all connect through the brain to do it.
Yep.
It's awesome. So you can't add or you can't take away, but you can't. Are you guys adding to try and?
We're actually purist about it. So we're sourcing from all organic vineyards, and also our winemaker does not add things to the wine.
Okay.
So like for example, there's a really awesome book that's on the market right now called Cork Dork. Bianna
Which
Boxter.
you quoted in the.
It's such a great book for anyone who's even like kind of remotely interested in learning a little bit about wine and wants a really great read. Read Cork Dork, and that kind of like opened my eyes too to that like. There's all these trade shows and commodities. Like if I want say we were making a white wine and we wanted it to have more oak profiles, which is like clove and vanilla and spice, you can buy that and dump it in as a chemical. And people are doing that. And I think a lot of it too is like a lot of the more well-known producers who have to have a consistent brand year after year after year. Like the caked breads or even a prisoner. A consumer wants cake bread Chardonnay and I want it to taste like this, or I want a prisoner red blend and I want it to taste like this. So year after year, each vintage has to taste the same. So to do that, there's some sort of manipulation going on with it.
Oh yeah.
We're not doing that. I mean, and we don't set out to do that.
That's part of the charm of it too.
It is the charm of winemaking. I mean, each vintage should be the same, should be different versus being the same.
I mean, it's only when you're doing year after year vintages from the same block, that's when it gets interesting because you're tasting the weather of that year. The soil's going to be the same, you know.
And if it was a crappy year, like you're not getting much, right? So
and it depends on when you harvested it.
Totally, there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah. So no matter what, we just think it's going to be fun that year after year, we may source a different Syrah for our GSM from a different block, which will completely change the flavor profile of the GSM.
It's crazy.
For better or for worse.
Right.
But and then that's where it's like, oh, it was a good year.
Yeah, exactly.
You open up the bottle. And
Exactly.
You got the 16.
And that also
So true.
it so plays too with the production. So like if it's a really volatile year with weather, because California does have some really volatile weather, and unfortunately, you know, those fires that happened in Sonoma in the fall. We were blessed that all of our grapes had been harvested, as well as Phil's for Inkadu. All of his stuff had been harvested, but a lot of folks hadn't harvested a lot of the late pickings, like a Cabernet Sauvignon, and they got hit with that. So because of that, there's a lot less supply, and because of the supply, that's going to command lower case production, a higher price point, supply and demand, and also just probably more quality juice. Because there's just not a lot of product to work with.
And everything will be a little
really
smoky.
Killer juice.
Yeah.
It might be.
Yeah.
It was an interesting year.
Yeah. 17.
17. Are you guys interested to start tasting? What would the wine at 17? When would that actually be coming back?
We'll bottle 17 next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And release
our
it
reds.
in 19.
But we are bottling, so we'll bottle our 17 Rosé, and we're doing a 17 Sauvignon Blanc, and we'll be bottling that in April.
And that's not like the rosé where like in 2015 you guys were already flipping it out.
Yeah, so the rosé and the whites, you don't barrel age
Yeah.
for nearly as long as you do the reds.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to drink them fresh.
You want to drink it fresh.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. You don't really like. I mean, some white wines and some Sauvignon Blancs can be stored and saved, but predominantly you're drinking a rosé or a white wine in the current vintage year.
So I hear you guys have quite the story for getting your first shipment of wine.
We arranged to have the wine shipped here, probably prematurely.
Taking ownership of it
Yeah.
without a distributor.
Yeah. So what that means is we need to store 9 pallets of wine. Each pallet has 50 cases on it. You can do the math.
And it's funny too because you kind of think like you're like, okay, I kind of know what 50 cases of wine looks like. No,
It's
a
not what
shitload
it's
of
not
wine.
what it looks like. It's how heavy it is.
It's crazy.
So we get the wine delivered to the warehouse. I rent a forklift, which I told the rental company that I knew how to drive a forklift. Picked it up really quick. Those things are fun to drive, by the way. So unload all the wine off the truck to our winery, which is not temperature controlled when we're not even making our wine there, and we had to figure out a place to put it. So what do? I have this brilliant idea to rent this giant is a Ryder truck, and they
move it all
went-
into a storage facility.
that we didn't have, right? So
Wait, I'm confused.
So I thought I had this brilliant idea to store all this wine in a ground floor storage facility. The same thing like if you were moving out of your house and you needed to move your furniture into
Home
a storage
storage.
facility.
Oh, okay.
That's
And-
like life storage. That's
And
where
it
we're
was
gonna store our
temperature
wine.
controlled-ish, like 70 degrees, but it's not going to kill your wine. It's just not ideal, right? So I rented this massive truck. I put all the wine on pallets.
9 pallets.
Into the truck. Almost killed myself trying to do this with a floor jack or whatever you call it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Bring it to the storage facility, and we had one of those hydraulic lifts on the back of the truck. So you put the pallet on it, and then you just lower it down. Well, we couldn't get the pallet of this is just Tiffany and I.
Right.
And I think you were brand new pregnant.
We didn't know it. We didn't know I was pregnant yet.
Oh my God! So yeah, Tiffany's not supposed to be lifting anything, and that's all she's doing is
All I'm
lifting
doing,
stuff.
yeah.
And
Moving wine. I moved. I mean,
Made
that
parents
and then
amazing.
Yeah.
sorry, Fenton, if you're watching this, your mom was lifting heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And
Lots of heavy stuff. I think that week I moved probably like 200 cases of wine
For
on my
sure.
own because you were gone. Then you left. You had to leave the next day, and you're like, so we got to get everything out of storage. Can you move those like 200 cases and like get them home?
and I said it just
No
like that.
problem, Leo.
So we realized we couldn't store the wine at the storage facility
After
because
you got all of
we
it
couldn't
out?
we couldn't get the wine off the truck. No
Oh,
shit.
okay.
Like
Like-
we didn't have a forklift anymore. We just had a pallet jack.
Yeah.
And this hydraulic lift, and we almost dumped a whole pallet of wine and like
Oh my gosh.
killed ourselves.
And then you remember I'm off the truck, and he like wants me to catch the pallet jack.
When the accidents happen.
Oh my gosh, it was horrible. Finally, I looked at him, and he's like, okay, well, catch it. You're gonna go down there, and I'm like, okay, and I'm standing there. I'm like, no. I go, this is gonna fall on me, and this is gonna crush me. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not doing this anymore, Leo.
We pulled
I'm
the
not
ripcord
doing
on
this.
that idea. Put all the wine back in the truck.
Parked our truck.
The truck and the cul-de-sac in front of our house. This thing is a massive truck. Parked it in front of our house.
What time of year is this?
This
It's-
is October, but it's still
But it's
warm.
Texas.
It's
It's
Texas,
Texas,
and
so
it's still
it's- yeah.
warm.
Still warm.
And it's hot. So what does Leo have to do?
I had to go to 3 different Lowe's and find a portable air conditioning unit that looked like R2-D2. Finally found one because it's seasonal and they're selling heaters, not air conditioners at this time of year. So I find this thing, put it in the back of the truck, and pull this hose, because you need a vent for the air conditioning, out to the back of the truck, pull the door down, rig up these pieces of wood.
And then the chain too. You
got
have
this giant chain, chained
chain
it up
and
to
lock.
lock it so no one would steal our
Yeah.
500 cases of wine. And it sits in front of our house
for a week
for at least a week.
because you were traveling.
Is it a good year? Is it a good year? Is that what we're drinking right now?
This is what
It
we're
is.
drinking.
It is.
That's what
It's
we're
a good
drinking.
year.
It's like honestly, I think it's like that's the thing. Like I was talking about, like how difficult it is to like think about like making a bottle and like what goes into like making an actual bottle of wine. What about even like getting the wine to you?
Time out. It's not done. We
Yeah,
still didn't know
there's
where we were
more.
going to put our wine. We were waiting for the weather to break, which we just assumed it wouldn't, and it honestly didn't. Found these guys, these angels who would store our wine, temperature controlled. All I had to do was drive it out to Johnson City. Piece of cake. So I go to leave to take this truckload of wine to Johnson City, and I'm going through our neighborhood, and we've got, the trees here are crazy, and they're overhanging the road. Well, I'm not used to driving this massive truck. So there's this branch, and when I say branch, I'm talking like this big coming off a tree. I hit it at about 30 miles per hour. It carves a hole in the top of the truck. Like, we're talking like this big,
Yeah.
almost collapsed the whole top into the truck.
Did it hit the wine that was in there?
I love how you care about the wine.
Yeah. This was on the way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was after coming back from Johnson
Yeah, I mean,
City.
all sorts of branches fell inside.
Oh, okay.
But like, I put a gaping hole in the
the
top of
rider
this
truck.
truck
Okay.
on my way out to deliver the wine. So, long story short, we delivered the wine. It's sitting in nice, beautifully air-conditioned space, and I have to return this truck that I only said I was going to rent for 1 day. Like 8 days later,
Because you had to keep it out in the front.
Yeah.
so our truck rental, which was going to be like $350 for a day, our bill at the end of it was like $3,500 because I had to pay
For the damages.
8 days extra, and I completely destroyed the truck in the making.
Crazy. And it was only 3,000? That's
Yeah,
I think it was more, and we definitely got double charged. Did you check that?
I'll look into it. And you know what I'll do? I'll sell our air conditioning unit on eBay.
Oh, there we go.
If anyone
Oh, you had
needs
to
an
buy
air-
it. I thought you rented it.
No, I bought it.
Dang. That's
So
crazy.
is it? But you know what? It's about the journey. Like that's what we keep telling
John,
ourselves.
It's a John. It's a
Yeah.
John-ism right there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that is the wine that's in our glasses right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is gone through much to get
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So-
So we've gone through a lot.
Cheers
Cheers.
Cheers.
to the journey.
To the journey.
I like how it's like been a little bit of both of like the actual just wine tasting things in general, and then also like the business side of like trials and tribulations
Yes.
that you because I feel like that's most of what you guys are experiencing.
Oh yeah, we didn't know what we were doing.
But I feel like that's how you yourself.
Yeah, that's
do-
how he operates.
That's how you do your business.
That's totally how
You
Leo operates.
You just go.
And it's interesting
yeah, for sure.
too, because like for me, this is my first entrepreneurial venture. I mean, I've always been in corporate America, and for Leo, this is like, I don't know, your 10th. And so,
Well, I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid of. Like, they think that they have to do something either successful or fail at something to call themselves an entrepreneur. What it comes down to is just you can't plan ahead too much and get everything perfect and then put a business plan together and then get your funding together and then go into business. You just got to go. You know, and don't be an idiot about it. Don't quit your day job because you've got this harebrained idea. Like,
Right.
keep your day
like
job.
the chive.
I like in
Yeah.
terms of the juxtaposition between you and his brother John, also co-founder of the Chive, is just like I like during the Chive podcast when you were talking about how it was like, all right, where are we at with the Chive, and then like once it finally hit that like one stride, it was like, all right, you guys have the conversation. He's like, all right, no, I gotta quit the job and
Yeah.
go.
Can actually go
and
into
you got to go for
business,
it.
yeah.
I mean, it's all about taking calculated risks. And, you know, those risks gets harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had no idea what we were doing getting into this. And we still don't. Like, I'd say we're
Everyday learning.
50% there, and we'll never know everything. I mean, as with any industry, it's always going to change, and you know, you're always going to be beholden to market conditions and consumers' taste and regulatory restrictions. So you can't think about any of that stuff, right?
so much more business oriented things to be thinking about. It's like,
Oh, trust me, with the wine, I'm not thinking about any of it. I'm just thinking.
You're letting me
We're like,
do all
where
that.
can we store it? And we have an endless supply of wine. And we get high on our own supply. So.
that's great. Well, speaking of foundations and whatnot, on the back of their wines, they have an anvil. And can you explain the
Significance of that.
significance
Yeah.
and the conception of why.
Yeah.
And this is the original drawing that my amazing sister Emily made for me that I commissioned her to do. She's an incredible artist, and she took basically a vector art design that I found online. I was like, hey, I want an anvil. And she did this cross-stitch pen and ink and just knocked it out of the ballpark. But I guess like where the idea for the anvil came from, again, I go back to branding at the end of the day.
Yes, that's exactly.
And I thought we had these amazing wine labels, and we had this really cool word mark with Resign, which is obviously Resig's our last name. Throw an N on it, it's Resign. We've got people's heads exploding because they just quit their job. So that all kind of tied together. But I always felt like we were missing, some weight to our logo. And literally, right?
Yeah.
And it's so weird. I've always had an affinity for anvils. Growing up, my favorite outfit was the Roadrunner, and I wore it every single day. If you look at any baby picture of mine, I'm wearing a Roadrunner outfit.
You need to get me a picture just so I can.
You didn't put that.
Oh, I've got you. And obviously the Roadrunner he's constantly outwitting or outrunning Wile E. Coyote, who's constantly trying to kill him with Acme rockets and whatnot, but it's always this anvil.
Yeah, the
that
Acme
he's,
anvil.
Yeah, that he's trying to kill him with. And it got to a point where my media company, Cheeseheads are a big thing, and they always have been, and I wanted to make a foam anvil hat. Like, my brother John says it best. He's like, dude, for every one good idea you have, you've got 9 really bad ones.
Yeah, and you have like a million ideas a day. You really do.
Yeah,
you
which means for all you math majors out there, I've got millions of bad ideas. So we never got to the point of making an anvil hat. But how funny would that be? It's like you're wearing an anvil on your head.
That's kind of fun. I like that. John poo-pooed that?
No, the U.S. government poo-pooed it.
Oh, okay.
I registered for, actually Warner Brothers did.
Yes, I remember
So
this.
I incorporated, I trademarked Acme Anvil.
Like
LLC.
the words or the company?
No, I trademarked Acme Anvil for the use of making foam anvils.
And Warner Brothers hadn't trademarked it.
That's such
Warner
a great
Brothers-
sentence. That is
Which
an
is
amazing
crazy,
sentence.
they
I
never-
trademarked Acme Anvil foam. Wait, say it again.
Well, no, I
Acme
trademarked
Just
Acme
the-
Anvil, and for any kind of trademark, you have to put it into some sort of usage category. So for our shirt, Keep Calm and Chive On, we trademarked it for apparel production. And that's their way of protecting the same name on different industries, like Acme Bar, Acme Anvils.
Oh, okay.
They can coexist and they can't sue each other because they're creating 2 very separate products. So I trademarked Acme Anvil. I owned the trademark for it because Warner Brothers never trademarked it. And so I'm like, shit, I'm going to make anvils and put Acme on it, and they can't do anything about it. So when the lawyers at Warner Brothers got wise to it, and I got a letter from Warner Brothers in-house legal counsel telling me why is cease and desist of why I cannot use their trademark Acme Anvil. And they go into all this litigious stuff of why I can't use it, but then they highlighted the Wile E. Coyote. And I'll send you this document. It is hysterical. And they go on to basically say, hey, if you continue doing business, if you do business under this name, which I hadn't done nor did I intend to do, we're going to sue you. So we never made the foam anvil head. But since then, I went on eBay. I was probably drunk one night, and I bought this big-ass anvil, and it weighed a ton. I think I bought this thing for like $50, and shipping and handling was like $300 because they're so damn heavy.
Where is it now?
It's in the garage.
It's still in the garage.
Yeah.
Because you can't move it.
No, I literally cannot move it.
Rent another forklift.
There we go.
Yeah, Paris can help me.
Shit in Our Garage by Leo Resig.
Yeah. So when I was thinking of like a really powerful icon that could complement the Resign name, I just kept coming back to the anvil. And started doing a lot of research on the anvil, and everyone, you think of it from the cartoons, but you also think of it from Braveheart movies
Forging
of people
swords.
forging swords.
Yeah.
And it truly is, in my opinion, the most important tool that's ever been created, because it's a tool that helps you create other tools. It helps you make horseshoes, and without horseshoes, we couldn't have put them on horses to travel long distances. Without the anvil, you could have made swords to battle and conquer lands. Like it truly is one of the most important tools ever made, and for that reason alone, and it looked good as a logo, which is important. So that's when we decided to roll with it as the logo, and I actually have a blacksmith class on Saturday.
Yeah.
Wow.
That I'm going
Yeah.
to. Yeah, I have a 2-day blacksmith class, because God bless Austin. I literally Googled blacksmith classes, like Blacksmith 101, Austin, Texas, and there's some dude who gets 8 people together once a month, and
Sounds about right.
you bang hammers against steel.
That sounds like the man equivalent of when people get together and they have wine and they do painting. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
That's
get
super
together.
fun.
I bet you're gonna meet the guy and you're gonna be like, we should all get together, have Resign Wine.
Oh, I'm
There
bringing
we
wine.
go. And then
he's-
pounce anvils.
He's gonna be like, dude, A, we're dealing with fire and heavy objects, and he goes, B, where's your beard? You're not manly
Are you
enough
gonna
to
grow
be
this
here
out
right
for
now.
Saturday?
Yeah, all the
awesome.
dudes show up are gonna be way more of a man than me, but I'll bring the booze.
There you go.
You know.
But check out Emily Mercedes art. Emily Mercedes art. One more time, Emily Mercedes art.
She does way more than anvils.
Yeah.
Bourbon, champagne, guns, gaming,
All the things.
all the things.
Yeah. Just to wind down.
Yeah. Wine. I like that.
What are the big things that you guys have learned so far from this whole process? I mean, obviously from doing all your other ventures in business and everything, there's a whole treasure trove of things that you've probably learned, but from this one in general, or just doing, starting business, branding and all that stuff, what would you be able to tell somebody that, I know just do it, but anything else?
What have you learned?
Gosh, I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think patience with
With me?
with you. With being business partners.
That's another aspect of it, because since you guys are married, it's like you can't just I guess we have a indecision about this thing.
Yeah.
Well, how about we just
Well, and-
spend time away from each other?
Yeah.
And I mean, and I also I have to be really respectful of Leo. I mean, Leo's running multiple other businesses. This is like a project for him. So I've really had to step up and take a lot of ownership and work at it. And it's not.
You've
it's,
kicked ass.
Thank you. It's for me. It's so much more than just a project where I was just working when Paris was napping, and now I'm working a lot on it. And I'm loving it, and it is passionate, and I'm learning and growing. And I think the biggest thing, though, that I've learned is just ask a lot of questions, and no question is like a bad question.
Is Phil ever like, all right, hold your horses?
Yeah.
Oh
He's
yeah,
been
I'm sure we frustrate the hell out of him, because we don't.
Excuse me.
Bless you. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're constantly changing things too.
But
on
even-
it. And he's like, we're like, hey, can we just do this instead? Because you have to plan ahead.
Yeah.
And he's a big planner, and we come up with different ideas, and we're procrastinators when it comes down to ordering bottles and capsules and corks.
Not anymore. Bottles are ordered. I'm on it.
You did that?
Yep,
Thank
everything.
you.
Bottles and corks. Yeah.
I think what it comes down to is we wanted to have fun doing this project.
Yeah.
And every time that if we even approach getting stressed out, we just have to take a step back.
Usually it's me getting stressed out,
Yeah.
and Leo
Tiffany's
reminds
like, what are we
me.
going to do about this? And I'm like, babe, we're not fighting over this. Like, we're not saving the world. We're making wine, and we're not even making wine. We're just
Trying to sell the wine.
We're just trying to
but
sell the
even
wine.
that for me too. I mean, I've never sold wine before. Like Leo and I both, we don't come from a background of like families who are wine producers or families who've been in the distribution world. So everything has this huge learning curve, right? And it kind of like too, just kind of got to go in and be like, okay, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, and selling the wine, like, this is my product. This is the brand. This is our story. This is who we are. Do you like it?
Yeah.
Let's drink the wine. So
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just don't put too much pressure on yourselves. Don't have too high expectations for. There's businesses that can blow up and catch fire and have hockey stick growth. We're not looking for that. Even if that happened to us and it got really popular, we'd run out of wine. Because we don't have that much. And then it's like, you got to wait till next year. And we'll get 500 more years.
Keep that hockey stick puck going, but can you guys wait till next year?
Yeah, so we got into it to learn, have fun, spend some time together, and have like something to share with each other, and just have fun with it. And if we're not trying to make a fortune off of it. I mean, there's a saying that, the wine industry has been turning billionaires into millionaires for years.
True.
So
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no joke. It's
it's expensive.
It's a business.
I would assume so, just because of the real estate that's like you have to have in order to grow the grapes in very specific climates.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah, and there's high quality grapes and there's low quality grapes, and the last thing we want to do is get into this and have bad
not
wine.
stand behind. We totally want to stand behind our product.
We would just get drunk and just open them and pour them down the drain and just chalk it up. Color accountant.
Yeah.
We're like, it fell off the back of the truck.
Well, awesome. This has been really such a learning experience, I hope, for you guys as much as me. I know so much more about wine. Now, what is it? The tannins? The tannins.
The tannins. Yeah, the grippiness.
Now I'm gonna be like the royal tannin bombs.
There you go.
Why not?
Why not?
I'm in on the wineness. Is there just the social plugs and whatnot? Where can people go to find you?
ResignWine.com, and also follow us on Instagram, and that's just handled Resign Wine.
Was it, in terms of getting your guys' name, was it just like you looked for it and you're like, all right, we're doing this because we can get all of these things?
Resign.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to tell the story. Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up not loving my last name because no one could pronounce it right. Just Resig or Resig or Resig. Whereas you throw an N on it, everyone knows what resign means.
That's awesome.
To which we own resignation.com. And we got to do something with that. It's got to be like the anti-LinkedIn. Here's where you go when you quit your job.
Resign.
Yeah.
Check out Resign Wine at resignwine.com. This is Javier Mercedes, and if you liked this whole interview-esque thing, I'm going to wave my hand some more and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.
Ooh, and this is wine from Resign Wine. Boom.
Boom.
Tannins are off the chain.
Tastes like